They stopped visiting the moment my check stopped coming. The calls dried up like rain in July. That was the day I realized love shouldn't be on a payroll. My name is Joanna Pierce, and before I tell you what I did next, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Somewhere quiet, I hope. Because this story, my story, deserves to be heard in silence. I used to think family was forever, that no matter what happened, blood would keep us bound. But time, as I've learned, has a way of revealing who's here for your heart and who's here for your handouts. I was a school teacher for 38 years, modest pay, simple life. When my husband, Robert, passed, the insurance money and his pension gave me a cushion, enough to help the kids, travel a bit, maybe fix the kitchen cabinets we always swore we'd get around to. I thought it was a blessing. I didn't realize it would become bait. The first year after Robert's death, my house was full. My son, Ethan, came by every Sunday. My daughter-in-law, Laura, always brought a casserole, cold but polite. My daughter, Anna, would bring her children, and the walls would echo with laughter again. I told myself, this is what family looks like. But somewhere along the way, the visits became transactional. Ethan's tone shifted. "Mom, you know how expensive daycare is now," Laura added softly. "And the mortgage. The bank's been calling." I didn't think twice. I wrote the checks, one after another. Christmas, birthdays, emergencies. The ink on my generosity never had time to dry. I thought I was helping. I thought I was needed. But the truth is, I was just useful. Then one winter, the calls stopped. The visits disappeared. The casserole dishes never returned. For weeks, I told myself they were busy. Everyone's got their own lives. But as the snow melted and spring came, silence stayed. One morning, I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where we'd once played cards and laughed over burnt cookies. The clock ticked too loud. I scrolled through my phone, half expecting a, "Hi, Mom." Nothing. I dialed Ethan's number, straight to voicemail. So I waited another week, then another. It wasn't until the bank called that the silence finally made sense. "Mrs. Pierce," the voice said, "we noticed some unusual activity on your debit card. Multiple withdrawals at ATMs in another city. Do you recognize these?" I didn't. When I checked my statements, my chest went cold. Hundreds here, thousands there. Transfers I never made. My son's name, buried in the notes of an online payment. Emergency fund. I remember staring at the paper, the ink blurring as tears hit the page. I wanted to believe there was a mistake. Maybe Ethan had mixed up his accounts. Maybe Laura had access by accident. But the part of me that had been a teacher, the one who'd spent a lifetime spotting lies in children's eyes, knew better. That night, I sat by the window watching the streetlights flicker. My neighborhood was quiet. The same stillness I used to find peaceful now felt cruel. I realized the truth wasn't that my family had gotten too busy. It was that their love had an expiration date, the moment my money ran out. It hurt more than I can say. To raise a son with everything you have, only to realize he saw you as a wallet with a heartbeat. I wanted to scream, to drive to his house and demand an explanation. But all I did was sit there, fingers trembling, whispering Robert's name to the empty room. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "They took everything, Joe. Everything but your will to start over." And that was the moment I knew I had to take back control. When morning came, I wasn't the same woman who'd gone to bed. Something inside me had cracked open, quietly, cleanly, like a piece of glass giving way under pressure. I didn't cry over breakfast. I didn't make my tea the usual way. I just got dressed, put on my old gray coat, and drove to Ethan's house. Their driveway was full. 2 cars, one of them brand new. I remember thinking, well, at least someone's doing fine. Laura opened the door. She looked surprised, but not happy. Her hair was perfect, as always, and her perfume filled the air before her words did. "Oh, Joanna, we weren't expecting you." "I can tell," I said, stepping inside before she could finish. The house was warm. Laughter from the television, toys on the floor. Ethan came down the stairs holding a coffee mug, looking at me like I'd interrupted a meeting. "Mom, everything okay?" I took the envelope from my purse and dropped it on the coffee table. My bank statements. "You tell me." He glanced at them, then looked away. "Mom, it's not what you think. Really, because it looks like you've been using my card for your emergencies." I could hear my voice shaking, but I didn't stop. "Tell me, Ethan, was the new car an emergency? The weekend in Vegas?" Laura folded her arms. "You're overreacting. It's not like you're broke. Families help each other." I turned to her slowly. "Yes, families do, but they don't steal." Ethan's face went pale. He tried to reason to smooth things over. "Mom, I meant to tell you. We were short on cash that month, and I was going to pay you back. Things just got convenient?" I snapped. "You had every chance to call me, Ethan. You didn't want to explain because you knew I'd say no." For a moment, the room went still, except for the hum of the refrigerator. My grandson peeked in from the hallway, clutching a toy truck, sensing the tension. Laura quickly sent him upstairs. I sat down on their couch, the one I'd helped them buy, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a mother visiting her children. I felt like a stranger intruding in someone else's house. I remembered all the Sunday dinners, the holidays I funded, the trips I never took so they could. I remembered holding Ethan's hand at Robert's funeral when he promised, "I'll always take care of you, Mom." Now I knew what that promise had really meant. "I'll take care of your money." "I'm cutting you off," I said finally, my voice calm and steady. "No more checks, no more loans. Whatever love we have, if there's any left, shouldn't depend on my balance." Ethan looked stunned. Laura let out a laugh under her breath, a tiny cruel sound that told me everything I needed to know. As I walked out, Ethan called after me. "Mom, don't make this bigger than it is. You're just tired. You need rest." I turned at the door. "No, Ethan, I need respect, and I think I've already paid enough for that." That evening, I drove to the church. The sun had already set, and the stained glass glowed softly from the inside. I sat in the last pew, head bowed, my hands still shaking. That's when I met Father Miguel. He wasn't what I expected. A young man with tired eyes and a voice that carried calm like a whisper. He sat beside me without a word until I finally said, "I think my children love my money more than they love me." He smiled sadly. "Then you've given too much in the wrong currency." I looked at him. "Meaning?" "Charity given from guilt is not kindness," he said softly. "It's captivity. You've bought their presence for years, Joanna. Maybe it's time to stop paying rent in love." His words struck something deep inside me. That night, for the first time in months, I didn't feel empty. I felt awake. The next morning, I opened my laptop, logged into my account, and saw the total balance, far less than it should have been. My heart sank, but oddly, I wasn't scared. Not anymore. Because I finally understood something. Money could be stolen, but peace had to be taken back. And I was done giving mine away. The next morning, the house felt too big for just me. Every sound, the kettle whistling, the mail slot clattering, echoed like an accusation. For days, I wandered from room to room, touching the walls Robert and I had painted, the piano Anna used to play, the empty guest room where my grandchildren once slept. I realized that what used to be my home had become a museum of moments no one cared to visit anymore. I sat at the kitchen table with my tea, watching the steam curl upward, and whispered, "What do you do when love runs out?" The answer came quietly, almost like Robert's voice in my mind. "You start again." So I did something no one expected. I called my lawyer. Her name was Amelia Grant. Sharp-eyed, steady-voiced, she'd handled Robert's estate years ago. "Joanna," she said when I arrived, "you sound different." "I am," I told her. "I'm done being afraid of what happens if I stop giving." I slid my folder across the desk. Account summaries, property titles, jewelry appraisals. Amelia looked them over carefully. "What would you like me to do?" she asked. "I want to close every account connected to my children, remove their access, rewrite my will, and I want to donate it all." Her pen froze. "All?" "Yes. The money, the jewelry, the house. I want it to mean something again." "Joanna," she said gently, "are you sure this isn't emotional? You might regret." I smiled faintly. "No. What I regret is teaching them that love comes with a signature at the bottom of a check." She nodded slowly, understanding dawning behind her professionalism. "Then let's begin." We spent hours sorting through documents, bank closures, legal transfers, donation agreements. She arranged it so that my late husband's pension would be divided among 3 children's hospitals and a women's shelter downtown. Each form I signed felt like shedding an old skin. When it was over, I held the last envelope in my hand, my jewelry appraisal. Robert had given me a diamond pendant on our 25th anniversary. I'd planned to leave it for Anna, but the thought of it sitting in a drawer, waiting for someday, felt wrong. That night, I walked to St. Luke's, the same church where I'd met Father Miguel. The front doors were still open, the air filled with candlelight and faint incense. He looked up from the altar when he saw me. "Joanna," he said warmly, "you look lighter." "I suppose I am," I answered, smiling. I handed him the small velvet box. "For the orphanage fund. I won't be needing it." He opened it and blinked. "This is a lot, Joanna." I nodded. "Not as much as what I've already lost, but maybe now it can do some good." He took my hands. "You've just rewritten your story, my friend. Most people wait a lifetime to do that." Back home, I sat down at my writing desk and took out a fresh sheet of stationery, the same kind I used for every birthday and holiday card I'd sent to my children. I wrote 3 short letters that night. Ethan, Laura, and Anna. "You've taught me a hard lesson, that generosity without gratitude becomes servitude. I'm freeing us all from that now. The money you once asked for will no longer come from me. It will go to those who've never asked at all. I hope you find peace. I already have. Love, Mom." The next morning, I mailed the letters. Then I placed the house key on the counter, the welcome home mat by the door, and stood there one last time. This house had held my joy, my grief, my family, but now it held only echoes. I walked out without looking back. The air outside was cool, the sky streaked with pink and gold. For the first time in years, I felt something stirring in me that I hadn't felt since Robert died. Freedom. And in that quiet morning light, I whispered to myself, this is what beginning again feels like. The taxi ride to the airport was silent, except for the faint hum of the radio. The driver tried to make small talk, something about the weather, about retirement, but I barely heard him. My mind was still back at that empty house, the one I'd just locked for the last time. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving, not Ethan, not Anna, not Laura. There was no dramatic farewell, no teary goodbye at the gate. Just me, a single suitcase, and a one-way ticket to Portugal. I'd read about a small coastal town called Cascais, a place where the sun painted the sea gold at dusk, and the old lived without being forgotten. A retirement community had written to me months ago, after I'd once inquired, just to see. Back then, I couldn't imagine living anywhere but near my family. But now, that word, family, no longer meant what it used to. When the plane lifted off, I looked out the window and watched my city shrink into dots of light, then disappear altogether. It didn't feel like running away. It felt like returning to something I'd misplaced, myself. The first morning in Portugal smelled of salt and coffee. The air was warm, the kind that kissed your skin instead of biting it. The retirement community wasn't the sterile place I'd imagined. It was alive. Terracotta rooftops, whitewashed walls covered in bougainvillea, laughter echoing from balconies. Strangers greeted me with gentle smiles. Someone had left a small basket of bread rolls at my door with a note. "Welcome home. Senora Joanna. Home. What a word. I hadn't felt it in years. A woman named Celia worked as the community nurse. She was in her 50s with soft curls and eyes that seemed to notice everything. She knocked on my door that first afternoon. "You're the new American," she said in a lilting accent, smiling. "Everyone's curious. You arrived with just one suitcase." I laughed. Yes, turns out when you give everything away, packing gets very easy. Celia tilted her head. "That sounds like a story worth hearing." I told her some of it, bits and pieces, about my late husband, my children, the silence that followed my generosity. She didn't interrupt or pity me. She just listened. When I finished, she said softly, "Sometimes, giving too much makes people forget how to give back. You did the right thing." That night, we sat by the ocean, two women from different worlds watching the waves collapse and rebuild themselves. Celia said something I never forgot. "The sea never clings to what leaves its shore. That's how it stays free." And for the first time in a long time, I understood peace. Days turned into weeks. I began painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I'd forgotten how colors could speak when words failed. Mornings, I walked along the cliffs, collecting shells. Evenings, I wrote letters to Robert, not to send, but to remember. The ache in my chest that once felt like loneliness started to feel like clarity. The silence I'd feared became comforting. There were no calls demanding help, no guilt hidden behind polite words, just stillness and laughter from new friends. I'd almost forgotten what my old life sounded like. Until the phone rang. It was late, past midnight. The number flashed with an area code from home. My heart stuttered. For a moment, I thought maybe it was Anna. Maybe she'd found my letters and understood. But when I answered, it was Ethan's voice. "Mom?" A pause, then strained and trembling. "Please, call us back. It's urgent." I froze. His tone wasn't angry this time. It was desperate. I could hear someone crying faintly in the background. Laura, maybe. He said something about trouble with the business, about needing help, about how they missed me. Then the line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the sea through the window. The waves were calm, unbothered. But inside me, a storm had started again. They finally called. But not because they missed me. Because they missed what I used to give. When the phone rang that night, it didn't sound like a call. It sounded like a ghost, one I had buried but never quite mourned. The screen glowed in the dark. Ethan. For a moment, my fingers hovered over the phone. My first instinct was to answer, because no matter how old a mother becomes, that reflex never dies. You hear your child's name, and your heart still moves before your mind can stop it. But something inside me whispered, "Wait." I pressed play instead. His voice filled the room, breaking the quiet rhythm of the sea outside my window. "Mom, it's me. Please call us back. It's urgent. Things are bad. The business, it's collapsing. Laura's father pulled out the funding. We're losing the house. I know we haven't talked, but please, please, Mom, we need you." There was a muffled sob in the background, Laura's voice faint but audible. "Tell her we're sorry. Tell her we didn't mean it." Then silence. For a long time, I just sat there, the message echoing in the dark. They finally called, but not because they missed me, because they missed what I used to give. The next morning, I didn't turn on the lights. The ocean outside was gray, the sky heavy with clouds. I sat by the window with my tea untouched and thought about how easily love can sound like desperation when spoken through need. I thought about the time Ethan came to me at 20, asking for tuition money he never repaid, about the Christmas when Laura gave me a thank you card that said, "We couldn't do it without you," and about every visit that ended with an envelope or a "just until next month." It all came back, one wave after another. And somewhere in between those memories, I realized something. They weren't cruel people, just entitled ones. And I had helped build that entitlement, one act of misplaced kindness at a time. Later that day, Celia knocked on my door holding a basket of fresh oranges. "You didn't come to breakfast," she said softly. "Are you all right?" I told her everything. The voicemail, the desperation in Ethan's voice, the guilt that always followed. She listened quietly, peeling an orange as I spoke. When I finished, she said, "You know, in my country we say, a mother's hands are made to give, but her heart must learn to rest." I smiled faintly. "And when it doesn't? Then she keeps feeding mouths that will never say thank you." Her words hit me like truth always does, slow, sharp, and undeniable. That evening, the sky broke open. Rain fell hard against the terrace tiles, drumming like memory. I took out a small notebook, my journal, and began to write. Not a letter to Ethan, but a reckoning to myself. "You have done enough, Joanna. You have given until the giving hurt more than the silence. You cannot save those who mistake your love for an ATM withdrawal. You can only save the woman who forgot how to say no." When I put the pen down, I felt lighter. I poured myself a glass of red wine and opened the windows, letting the smell of rain drift in. Then, just as I began to relax, the phone buzzed again. Voicemail, this time from Laura. "Joanna, it's Laura. I know you're upset. I know Ethan crossed lines. We all did. But please, we're drowning here. You've always been the strong one, the smart one. You can fix this, like you always do." Like you always do. I almost laughed. That single sentence was the story of my entire motherhood. They didn't want me. They wanted my ability to fix what they broke. My wisdom was currency. My love was leverage. The next morning, the rain stopped. The world smelled clean. I made my bed, combed my hair, put on my soft blue sweater. The one Robert always said made my eyes look like calm water. Then I sat at my desk and wrote a letter. Not to beg, not to scold. Just to say goodbye properly this time. "Dear Ethan, I heard your message. I'm sorry things are hard, but I can't be the solution anymore. For years, I confused money with love. I thought keeping you comfortable meant keeping you close. I see now that comfort without consequence breeds dependency, not care. I hope you find strength in the struggle. I truly do. But my chapter in your story is over. I am safe. I am at peace. And I hope one day you'll understand that peace can't be bought or borrowed. It has to be earned. Love, Mom." I sealed the envelope but never mailed it. Some truths are meant to be written, not delivered. That night, the community hosted a small celebration for a neighbor's birthday. Fairy lights hung from olive trees. Laughter floated through the courtyard, and someone played a soft guitar tune. I stood there among strangers who felt more like family than my own blood. When they passed me a glass of wine, I raised it quietly. "To peace," I said. Celia clinked her glass against mine. "And to never answering the wrong calls again." Later, when I lay in bed, I replayed Ethan's message one last time. But this time, I didn't feel pain. I felt distance, a kind of emotional ocean between who I was and who I had become. I whispered into the dark, "I forgive you, Ethan, but I'm not coming back." The sea roared softly outside, as if it approved, and for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel responsible for anyone else's storm, just my own calm. I turned off the light and smiled into the darkness, because sometimes peace doesn't come when they apologize. It comes when you stop waiting for the call. The days after the call were strangely quiet, not empty, just still, like the world had paused to let me catch up to myself. Every morning the sea greeted me first. Its rhythm was steady, forgiving. The gulls circled lazily above the cliffs, and the fishermen's shouts carried across the water like small, honest prayers. I'd watch them untangle their nets, their movements patient and sure, and think, that's what healing looks like. No rush, no audience, just quiet persistence. I spent those days in reflection. I walked barefoot on the sand, painted until my wrists ached, and began writing stories again. Stories that weren't about pain, but about becoming. The kind of stories that reminded me life doesn't end when people stop clapping for you. At 72, I had finally learned that starting over doesn't mean erasing what came before. It means owning it, then choosing differently. Celia noticed the change before I did. "You're lighter," she said one morning as we sat outside the cafe overlooking the harbor, "like someone finally took a heavy bag off your shoulders." I smiled. I suppose I finally realized I was the one carrying it. She chuckled. "You know, I think we all have that moment. Some people call it freedom. Others call it growing up." "For me," I said softly, stirring my coffee, "it's called peace." The community had begun to feel like family, though no one demanded anything from me. The people there didn't ask what I could give. They just wanted my company, my laughter, my stories. On Wednesdays, I taught English to the local children. On Fridays, I joined the art class. The walls of the community hall soon filled with colors, landscapes, seascapes, portraits of faces that finally looked alive again. One afternoon, Celia came running, holding a thick envelope. "Mail for you, Senora Joanna, from America." My heart fluttered. I hadn't expected anything, not after the silence that followed. Those calls. The handwriting on the envelope stopped me cold. It wasn't Ethan's. It was Anna's. I opened it carefully, afraid the paper might dissolve under the weight of memory. "Mom, I don't know if this letter will find you, but I needed to try. I know what happened with Ethan. I was angry at first, but mostly at myself, for not seeing it sooner. You were right all along. We took from you because it was easy, because you never said no. I told myself it was love, but it wasn't. It was comfort, and comfort made us blind. I don't want your money, Mom. I don't want anything except a chance to see you again. I've missed your voice, your cooking, your laugh that used to shake the whole house. If you'll have me, I'd love to visit, just to talk, just to be near you. Love always, Anna." I didn't realize I was crying until I saw the ink bleed across the page. It wasn't the words themselves, it was the sincerity in them, the absence of guilt, the presence of love. I pressed the letter to my heart and whispered, "You found me, my girl." That night I sat by the water, writing her back. "My dearest Anna, you've already given me what I needed. Your truth. You don't have to ask to visit. My door is open, but more importantly, my heart is too. Come when you're ready. Bring only yourself. Leave the guilt behind. You'll find me by the sea, where the sunsets turn the water gold. When you arrive, I'll be waiting with coffee and stories, and maybe a little forgiveness for us both. Love, Mom." 3 weeks later, she came. It was early evening when the taxi pulled up near the garden. I recognized her instantly, her dark hair tied back, her nervous smile just like mine when I was younger. She hesitated at the gate, holding her suitcase, eyes scanning the courtyard until they found me. I didn't move at first. I just looked at her, the daughter who had once avoided my calls, now standing in front of me trembling like a child. Then I opened my arms. She came running. We didn't speak for a long time. There were no apologies, no speeches, no explanations. Just a long, trembling embrace that seemed to bridge the years between us. When she finally pulled back, she laughed through her tears. "You smell like paint and salt water, Mom." "And you," I said, smiling, "smell like coming home." That night, the whole community celebrated. They thought Anna's arrival was an event worth toasting to. Candles flickered across the tables, music drifted through the courtyard, and laughter filled every space that had once known silence. Anna met Celia, and within minutes the two were chatting like old friends. She looked around and whispered, "You built a life here, a good one." "I did," I said, "but there's always room for more love, don't you think?" She nodded, tears glimmering. "I think I'm ready to learn from you this time." Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Anna and I sat by the sea. The moonlight painted her face silver, the waves breathing softly behind her. "Do you miss them?" she asked quietly. I knew who she meant. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not in the way I used to. Missing someone doesn't always mean wanting them back. It can just mean remembering what you gave and finally forgiving yourself for giving too much." She reached for my hand. "I'm sorry it took me so long." "It's all right," I said, squeezing her fingers gently. "Sometimes people have to lose the warmth before they understand the fire." When the night grew colder, we stood. Anna leaned her head on my shoulder, just like she used to when she was little. I looked out at the horizon, the endless dark of the ocean, and thought of all the women who might be watching this, sitting somewhere in their own silence, wondering if it's too late to start again. So I said softly, for them as much as for myself, "They say you lose family when you walk away, but sometimes you find yourself instead. And when you do, the right ones find you too." The sea murmured in agreement, brushing foam over my feet. I closed my eyes, breathed in the salt air, and smiled, because this time I wasn't waiting for anyone's call. I was already home,